NBA is in crisis. The refs have way too much power, controversial calls, timid texts, and free throw parades. The NBA refereeing madness has completely spun out of control. Is it bruised egos or just pure incompetence? Can the league fix its referee problem? Are they the ones to blame? Or is it something much bigger? Fans don't buy tickets to watch the refs. They pay to watch their favorite star players. Today, NBA referees are highly emotional and power-tripping, trying to become the star of the show.
Over now. Let me tell you this, these fans did not come here to see Curtis Blair, Trey Maddox, or Andy Nagy, whoever they are.
Fans are losing patience with these ridiculous incidents. They're also losing interest in the regular season games. This is a bigger problem than just the refs throwing temper tantrums, but also has to do with how the rules of the game are officiated today, with constant interruptions from foul calls preventing defenders from playing physical at all. In dissecting the challenges faced by the NBA, two overarching themes emerge: the overreaction of referees and the restrictive nature of current rules on defense. There's a power struggle between the refs and the players, as well as between offense and defense. This power imbalance is creating a worse product, as night after night, fans are upset. The intertwining dynamics between these elements have created a complex scenario for the league. Referees, driven by emotion and at times questionable decisions, have become a focal point of fan discontent. Simultaneously, the evolving landscape of the game, where offensive prowess is often unchecked due to rule constraints, poses a significant challenge to maintaining a delicate balance between offense and defense. As we scrutinize the league's past and present, it becomes evident that a holistic approach is necessary. The interplay between overzealous officiating and rule-induced defensive constraints underscores the need for comprehensive reforms that address both aspects. Referees should be held accountable for their mistakes as well.
And 16 in Cleveland.
The over-emotional reactions by the refs are taking center stage right now and causing outrage from the fans. But this isn't the only issue with modern-day officiating. The scales have tipped and are heavily weighted in favor of the offensive player, allowing them to bait their defender into endless ticky-tacky fouls. Watching basketball games where two teams shoot 25 free throws each is far from entertaining. The games take forever, and the rhythm is continually interrupted by foul calls that occur because the stars cannot be defended with the current rules. But in addition, it seems that the NBA is against any tiny show of emotion from the players, which is wild because it is the passion, intensity, and dedication that we love about the game. We want the players to care every night we see them play. But when they are the slightest bit emotional, the refs are quick to hand out techs or ejections. The referees are calling more and more absurd technical fouls every night for actions as simple as a little taunting or hanging on the hoop half a second longer than allowed. This is slowly ruining the game we love. This situation affects the ratings and the global image of a league who've always strived to reach every corner of the world. But one thing is clear: the fault does not lie with the players. They are more skilled than ever. You can't blame players like Trae Young, Joel Embiid, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or James Harden for taking full advantage of rules that allow them to score and draw fouls with ease. In many cases, they're becoming completely unguardable. But are they really? Or are we just regulating out defense in the NBA? Are the referees the real reason today's game is morphing and losing popularity? This topic is more nuanced than it seems at first glance. Luckily, the NBA is a league with a lot of history and tradition, so we can go back in time to see similar cases. There was an era, we could say a bit of a dark era, within the league in the early 2000s. The 1990s was such an incredible decade in terms of growth that the 2000s weren't able to keep up. Legacy wasn't enough to keep afloat a product that was increasingly focused on the defensive side of the court, partly because of the absence of offensive juggernauts like those that exist today, and partly because of an antiquated rulebook that handicapped the world's best scorers. The era was also identifiable by several controversies that permeated the entire culture of the league, such as the infamous fight between the Detroit Pistons and the Indiana Pacers, better known as Malice at the Palace, a moment which changed the NBA rules forever. In this transition process, David Stern took the opportunity to include rules that would create a more entertaining and attractive product for fans around the world. Thus, in 2004, the famous hand-checking foul was introduced, which was one of the most important rule changes in league history. A defender may not place and keep his hand on an opponent unless he is in the area near the hoop and with his back to him. A defender may momentarily touch an opponent with his hand anywhere on the court as long as it does not affect the opponent's movement, whether in speed, quickness, balance, or rhythm. A simple rule that completely upset the balance between offense and defense that previously existed in the league. Before, excessive physical contact prevented the offensive stars from shining, who were guarded with almost no restrictions. As soon as it was introduced, NBA scoring trends would change forever. We can see this easily demonstrated with data. The following graph shows some of the most important offensive records since the 2004 season, the year in which, as mentioned, the hand-checking foul was introduced. The average score for each team has skyrocketed over time, but this process began just before the rule was introduced. Since then, in 20 of the last NBA seasons, the average score has exceeded the previous season's figure, an explosion that had its biggest evolution from 2014 to 2019, where teams went from scoring 100 points on average per game to 110.2. The reason? Very simple. Basketball was played faster. The NBA's pace progressively increased from 2004 to 2019, going from 90 possessions to over 100 per game, and has remained virtually unchanged since then. Coaches know that the easiest points to score are those scored in transition, and players have adapted to a style of play that allows them to take shots without having used up much of the shot clock. Logically, this has increased scoring and has grown the averages of all the league's stars. Not only has the game become much faster, the players have become much more efficient also. Teams in 2004 were barely able to score 102.9 points per 100 possessions, which is the average offensive rating in the NBA this season. In addition, the value of the effective field goal percentage has gone from a mere 47% in 2004 to an exorbitant 55% this season, in part also due to the arrival of advanced stats, which showed that mid-range was the most inefficient shot in basketball, and which began to change the style of play with pioneering teams such as the Houston Rockets or the Golden State Warriors. To sum it up, the current players are just too good. At least, they're too good to be defended by today's officiating. Something similar happened with Shaq when the NBA was a league of opposite tendencies to the current one. But in his case, you could always send him to the free throw line, right?
Broken out here at Staples.
In today's league, the big men are so skilled that they're shooting 80% from the free throw line. Unfortunately, foul baiting is a thing in today's basketball. Elite scorers are adept at going to the line, and it's true that referees, when in doubt, often get carried away. But this has been going on forever.
Rockets have the numbers. Harden's got a corner man in Chris Paul, but he's tied up. And a whistle.
In the end, superstars getting superstar calls is an inherent part of basketball culture, but the problem with today's referees goes much deeper than that. It's true that most of the blame lies with the current league rules. The referees' interpretation for those rules have become very questionable and inconsistent. Without rule changes, the number of free throws has increased from 21.7 in the 2017 to 2018 season to 23.5 in the case of last season. But do they really shoot too many free throws?
Coming up, I hope so. There it is, underhand. Oh, he makes it. This young man.
The truth is that we have a very bad memory, and are actually living in an era of basketball with less free throw attempts per game. The last 5 NBA seasons are among the 10 with the fewest total free throws attempted in the history of the league since 1946. Yes, it may seem counterintuitive, but it makes sense once you dive deeper. The reason is simply that the players have also improved a lot on defense. The average NBA player is much better at avoiding fouls than the average player 20 seasons ago. In fact, in the entire history of the league, there have only been 7 instances where, on average, teams have committed less than 20 personal fouls per game. And yes, this season is one of those 7. And not only that, contrary to popular belief, the average NBA player is infinitely better on defense than the average player of 20 seasons ago. Players lacking athleticism were able to have long careers in the best league in the world because the offense wasn't able to take advantage of their deficiencies. Whereas today, we have former MVP candidates who are out of the league at 28 years old. So really, the amount of free throws is not the NBA's problem. In fact, it seems that by studying the trends, the league is doing a good job of mitigating stoppages and making playing time more continuous and uninterrupted. The underlying problem is the consistency with the foul calls from night to night, from team to team. Fans, coaches, and players are all outraged this season, which seems to be one of the most inconsistent officiating seasons we have ever seen. Here's Mike Brown bringing out a laptop at a press conference to show all the missed calls of the night.
Fox barely puts his hand on Dame's hip. Okay? Incidental contact. He didn't push him or anything. He barely puts his hand on there.
Darko Rajakovic's press conference after his Toronto Raptors lost to the Los Angeles Lakers quickly went viral.
And trying to get to the rim without flopping and not trying to get foul calls, he gets 2 free throws for the whole game.
The Serbian's intense anger made all the sense in the world after the Lakers shot 23 free throws to the Canadian team's 2 in the fourth period. Something that, in a tight game, is completely unfeasible. Anyone who has played basketball at a high level knows that with skilled intensity, that cannot happen. But, as seen during some instances, there is something fishy behind NBA referees. After a win against the New York Knicks, Allen Iverson scored 49 points and also spoiled the day of one of the referees who have gone down in league history, albeit not for the better.
Iverson jammed 72-69 Philadelphia.
Tim Donaghy is one of the few former NBA referees who has spoken out publicly about gambling and fixing, a fact that has been a major controversy for the league and one that has made fans lose credibility in a fair game. And even though the Donaghy scandal happened many years ago, many players still insist that it is something that happens today.
Referee Tim Donaghy had admitted that he had illegally bet on games he himself had officiated.
During the past playoffs, this clip of Jimmy Butler scoring a basket with the referee in the background went viral. His reaction suggested that he wasn't very interested in the Heat winning the game, and the NBA also began an investigation with a Twitter burner account that seemed to fit his profile. Soon after, Eric Lewis, the referee in question, decided to retire from the league before the case went any further. Undoubtedly a suspicious occurrence that, incidentally, has not been discussed again. Yet another case. On Gilbert Arenas' podcast, Andre Iguodala and Evan Turner, former members of the Philadelphia 76ers, were guests, and for a moment, the shooting guard told an anecdote with Elton Brand leading up to what was to be the biggest game of his young career. Game 7 against the Celtics in the second round of the 2012 playoffs. Brand, a veteran in the league, told him a line he would always remember. To win by 1, we're going to have to win by 15. It's obvious that the NBA is a business. They want you to put out the most entertaining product to attract the most viewers. No one's going to stop you from scoring more points than your opponent, but they can help in some way to make the outcome easier or harder to achieve. This is not to say that all referees are corrupt or that all games are rigged, but the possibility that this happens from time to time is not far-fetched. Referees have too much power, and they're not held accountable when they miss calls routinely. That's one of the reasons why the NBA might be losing its appeal. Despite the fact that these soft technical fouls are a real nuisance when it comes to watching the game, destroying the momentum of the teams and their fans, this is not the NBA's only problem. The complaint most often heard from fans watching a random game in February is in the regular season, teams don't play defense. This is false. It is logical and natural that defensive intensity is not the same in a playoff game as it is in a regular season game. If regular season games were played like playoff games, we would have a league full of injuries. The current rules are essentially preventing the players from playing defense, all in the name of trying to make an appealing, dazzling offensive product for the fans, but in reality, may be ending up with opposite results. The NBA needs offense and defense to be kept in balance. Just like in a video game, the offensive players have the cheat code. They're taking full advantage of an outdated rulebook that's not capable of adapting to the actual game today, and causing some players to be impossible to defend. Stars can abuse their dominance because they know that the defense is basically handicapped, leaving fouling as the only option to stop them. That translates to the fact that the Stars, unlike teams, do shoot too many free throws now. The overall talent in the league has risen so much over the last few decades that the third shooting guard on any team is capable of scoring tough shots. 30 years ago, a coach was lucky if 2 of his on-court players were efficient shooters. Today, anyone can shoot. The presence of 5 offensive threats creates gravity that keeps their defenders glued to them, and that makes it very difficult to make side-help defense. Coaches have to improvise ways to slow down the Stars with tactical resources never seen before, but usually, these are adjustments that will happen only in the playoffs. In short, this offensive spectacle is creating the notion that there's no defense in the NBA during the regular season. The reality is that defenders can only do so much. We're at a point where the offense has completely overtaken the defense, and the defense is unable to keep up. The scales have tipped, not because the players have improved less in this area, but because the amount of resources they're allowed to use is so limited. With defenses constrained, offensive superstars will continue to dominate the game, especially at the free throw line. The NBA finds itself at a crossroads. Overzealous referees and handcuffed defenses have created a power imbalance skewed heavily towards offenses. Stars exploit rules to draw fouls at will, while ticky-tack texts suppress any emotion. The league risks alienating fans with this disjointed product. Restoring balance is crucial. Empowering defenders within a thoughtful rules framework can curb this offensive dominance. Referees need accountability to limit influence over outcomes. With carefully considered adjustments, the NBA can course correct and deliver a captivating nightly product once again. This may require testing new approaches or a paradigm shift in coaching strategies, but for the good of the league, they need to lean into change rather than clinging to the lopsided status quo. They need to find a way to balance the power dynamics between referees and players, as well as between the offense and defense, to salvage the game we all know and love.